What's good, y'all? Welcome back to the Playmakers Corner podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts for today, Simon Villanos, aka Coach V.
And I'm your other co-host for this episode, Kodey Stoffer.
And we are continuing our culture series here where we talk about Colorado football and all the aspects that affect us, athletes, coaches, and, you know, obviously the whole of Colorado football culture here. And I feel like this episode is definitely a big one here. We're going to talk about 7v7 football. More specifically, I think we're going to talk about clubs and stuff like that. There aren't as many teams as in high schools with 7v7, but some of the things we're going to talk about is money, favoritism, recruiting impact, and coaching here. But Kodey, you know, you feel pretty strongly about this. Also, I am going to preface this as well. So when, I guess, we looked this up, when all the 7v7 teams in Colorado started popping up, at least the club ones, we're talking about Warriors 7v7, and then Team Full Gorilla as well, you know, that was just a little bit past me and Kodey's time. We graduated 2017. We both graduated in 2017 here, and we talked about this off air, but it just wasn't really a thing back then, right, Kodey?
Yeah, no, I mean, when we looked at when some of the bigger 7v7 clubs kind of started, at least the ones that we know of, like Warriors or TFG, those were just getting started the year that we graduated or the year after we graduated high school. So, you know, we might come off, I was joking with Coach V here, we might come off a little boomery here, but, you know, this is our opinion. We're going to talk about it and its impact on Colorado football culture. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, you know, it's okay if we sound a little boomery. This is definitely going to be interesting because, like, we're both definitely Gen Z, and a lot of our listeners, at least that are athletes still, are also Gen Z. So it'll be interesting to see how this come across. But you know what? Speaking of being a boomer here, Kodey, why don't you go ahead and talk about 7v7 and some of the things that, you know, you may not like a whole ton about, personally.
Yeah, and I feel like every time we go to a 7v7 event or anytime we start talking about it, this always comes up, and it's just the aura of it, honestly. I'm all for, like, celebrating and having fun, but the amount of trash talking in 7v7 football exceeds tackle football to, like, the nth degree. It's immeasurable how much trash talk and taunting and all of that stuff goes up. Like, I don't know if it's just, like, not a penalty in sevens, but like some of these celebrations get so, like, there's punting the football after getting an interception and the team has to go pick it up. There's, like, chucking a football way out of the end zone after you get, like, an interception, or there's, like, getting up in people's faces. And, you know, just like, and I'm gonna just briefly weave this in, and we talked about doing this. You know, we went to one of the biggest, if not the biggest, 7v7 tournament, which was hosted at Mullen just, I guess, from this recording last week, which this is being recorded on June 2nd, by the way. So just a week prior to this, or weekend prior to this, we went to, over Memorial Day weekend, that is the largest 7v7 tournament. And I literally heard one coach say to another coach, "Hey, drop the pin. I'll find you there." I'm like, what? This is sevens, dog. Like, no, this, I don't know. It bothers me. It bothers me a lot. And I'm gonna sound like a boomer with it, but, like, just the trash talk that gets ramped up to, like, I don't even know a comparison for the amount of trash talk and taunting and, like, spiking the ball in, like, people's faces, or, like, oh my god, or I don't even know. I mean, stare downs are one thing, but they go on for, like, a whole minute. They will go all the way back to the sideline continuing the stare down. So the players are more concerned with staring down their opponent than celebrating with their teammates. I feel like that's not an uncommon thing that I saw. And not like we've obviously seen that probably the most with Colorado 7v7 football, but I also saw teams from across the country doing that over and over again. And just like, I don't know, man. So, sometimes I want to say like the archetype of like build that's doing the most trash talking drives me nuts. Because I feel like a lot of the time I feel like no, hear me out. I feel like a lot of the time that the people that I see talking the most smack are like a lot of the time like corners that are like 130 pounds, and if a running back gets a toss play, they're gonna get smoked in pads. You know what I mean? Like they're guys that, I mean, they're still gonna do their thing in trash talk and pads, but not to this degree, not to this extent. And that kind of drives me nuts too. Like, bruh, that's cool that you broke up this pass on, you know, this bad throw from a quarterback for this target that if it got to him, that clearly would have not went your way. Or like if this fool had pads on, like what you're celebrating at like a tag, like when they're, because it's two-hand touch for those who don't know, in case you don't know, sevens is tag. And you know, for people celebrating like big tags and staring people down on tags and stuff, it drives me absolutely batty. I have like, what are you celebrating, dog? You're celebrating like touching someone else on like giving somebody a pat on the back that stops them, and like you're staring them down. I just keep chuckling because maybe I don't get it. Maybe that's just how it's always been with sevens. But like, even though we played before the club seven kind of launching, we still had sevens in high school, and people were not acting like this. People were not being super froggy, staring down forever. Like, if any of us did that, our coach would be making us run till we died. Like, and that was the only time we got to pass the ball and really celebrate. I'm going to just put that out there. That was, like, the time that we got to throw the most. I mean, any team, right, in sevens. But, like, I went to a school where we ran the ball all the time. And so if there ever was a time for us to, like, actually celebrate throwing multiple touchdowns, it wasn't usually during a game, unless it was, like, 2. You know what I mean? So if there was ever a time for us to be froggy, it would be then. But we weren't with the school environment versus the club environment. I don't know what it is, but it's just really toxic. And like the hostility is really high amongst a lot of clubs. And it's just like, it's way too personal. You know what I mean? Like, it's a game. Like, there's a chance that with club sevens, you're going to go against somebody who goes to your school. And so if you're like acting like a donkey, you know what I mean? And then you have to go get in pads the next week and like call that person brother. Like, it depends on how you were acting, but like some of it just feels way too hostile for, I don't really think, a good reason, personally.
Okay, so for the listeners out there, I told Kodey before the episode that I was going to set him up and I was just going to let him rant because, you know, he's been having a little bit of a tough day. And so, first off, agreed. But let's go ahead and focus in on the hate here. I've been sitting on this for a while, too.
I've been sitting on this for a minute.
No, yeah. I mean, the number of times we'd just be watching a game and you'd be like, I can't say what you really said because I would bleep out most of what I'm about to say here. But you're like, oh, I hate sevens. This stupid, like, you know. And I get it, right? And so let's focus the hate, right? I think the thing for us, and here's my thing. I'm not even gonna act like I was like a Boy Scout because I'm gonna be honest. You know, I wasn't. You know, I wasn't the dude that was always a great sport and whatnot. You know, I came from a little bit of a tougher background. I'm cool with scrapping whenever, you know. And so if you're going to disrespect me, I don't care if I get thrown out. I'm at least going to break your jaw. At least that's how I've always approached it. So I'm not even going to act like, you know, I'm the best sport in the world. And Kodey knows this. Not because I did that to him or anything, but from seeing how I act.
So Coach V has had to
I should probably censor myself.
Get some help from teammates to avoid
like
collateral, I guess.
But
or more like our opponents have needed Simon's teammates. I'm gonna put it like that.
What I'm saying is that I'm not the one to talk about sportsmanship at all. even though I am an adult and I am a teacher and coach. And at this point, I should definitely, endorse it, right? But also, it's definitely a little much, because I think the closest thing you could compare, like, football 7v7 is to AAU basketball. But the difference, and I think this is a really big difference, is that it's not like real football, and we know that. Because it's two-hand touch, it's sevens, there's no hitting, it's, a slightly less physical and all that stuff, and it's just different, right? And I think the difference between talking trash in 7v7 football and what makes it so jarring versus talking trash in AAU is that in AAU, you could still, dunk on somebody. You could still catch a body. You could still, commit a hard foul, or, well, I guess you could do that in sevens too, but you could still commit like a hard screen or whatever. Like, it's still the entire game being there and you making plays in that game. And so I guess I understand it a little bit better, because I've always said this to Kodey. I feel like 7v7 football is just like AAU, you see it all the time. The thing that might just be a little bit more jarring, though, is that it's not like real football. Is that fair to say, Kodey? And so that kind of is where maybe some of the eye rolling comes from.
It's not tackle football. And it's not...
Sorry, yeah, it's not tackle football. Yeah, I shouldn't say it's not real football.
And so, but the thing is all of these sevens guys, at least to my knowledge, none of these clubs, they're not a 7v7 football player, if that makes sense. They are a tackle football player who participates in sevens in the spring. And so
exactly.
I see him acting up, and I'm like, you better back it up when I see you in the fall with pads on. You better be physical, and you better, you know what I mean? They're knowing that it's an accessory to tackle football in the fall for all of these athletes, not some, all of these athletes, to know it's an accessory sport. That's where that's where the eye rolling comes from. Is, wow, bro, this is like acting a fool at a spring game is kind of what it feels like, but somehow worse. You know what I mean? Because at least in the spring games, you have pads on, but you don't have pads on, but you're gonna have pads on, and so and I feel like the guys that I don't see talking really in sevens, I mean, they still celebrate, don't get me wrong, but those are the guys that I watch in the fall, and they back up their 7v7 play probably the most. If there was a metric, right, on trash talk to, I guess a reasonable amount of trash talk, I still think that trash talk is normal, you know what I mean? You're gonna see that in competition, but I think that there's somewhat of a correlation. There's a sweet spot, right? Where, you still do your stare downs after mossing somebody, but they last the normal 3 seconds. Then you're up shoulder bumping your teammates and stuff. You don't care about that corner that you just mossed anymore. I could think of a ton of examples from this class of 23 that are guys that, watching them in sevens, they weren't being super extra, at least in the competitions that we saw. And then they came out in the fall and they delivered. I think that was really, really common for this class of 23 that we watched this past year. A lot of those names that we got from watching Club 7, you know what I mean? Simon, what are your thoughts on kind of that observation too? That kind of sweet spot where it's the real is being real in the sprint. They're being authentic year round versus I think that some of these kids, some of these athletes, the way they're behaving in sevens is not who they are in the fall. And so that's probably another part for me, is that it's very disingenuous, I think, kind of the way they conduct themselves in the spring and sevens versus around their tackle team the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, it's different when you get hit. It's different when you have to stop Columbine or Rock Canyon's wing T run offense and they just run over you because they're not creative enough to do anything else, that's a shot. But I mean, it is different though when you get hit. And so, you know how it is. You could talk a lot of trash during the spring and whatnot, but when it comes down to it and you can't stop the run, and you're getting ran over, it definitely hits different. But some dudes are just built different that way. In a bad way. They got that, Dylan Brooks in him, where they kind of invite the victim not the victim mentality. They kind of invite themselves to be a victim by talking all that trash, and then they get bossed up, right? And it's not good. And so I kind of see, I guess, why. I'm not gonna blame coaches and whatnot, but why the culture is like that, where there's so much confidence and ego, I would say, when it comes to 7v7, and how it does make the competition a little toxic. I could definitely see why, because I think you need to be a confident football player regardless. I'm never gonna be like, well, you should just not be as confident anymore, because I think once you start approaching that, it could be a dangerous game for sure. I'd always want my players to be confident, but at the same time, don't make me look like an idiot for putting you out there. If I'm a coach, like, please don't do that. And that's just me. I mean, that's also why I don't coach 7v7 football, and probably will never do it, honestly. And I think that's just a part of the culture in 7v7, not just Colorado 7v7. Let's be clear about that.
It's all 7v7, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I mean, we see the TikToks, right? We see the TikToks about it. It's all over our FYPs some weekends, right?
Backflips across the entirety of the end zone after a touch. Like, literally the entire end zone. And this, I'm not referencing a Colorado Sevens team. I'm referencing something, like you said, that I've seen. I'm like, dude, what the clock is still running. Like, it's game time. What is going on here?
Yeah, but I mean, that's just the beast of it all. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm sure there's some, athletes out there that are listening and are all go, look at these boomers. They don't know what it's like to play and whatnot. Well, I mean, yeah, that's fine, dude. But well, most of the time we really be in the same spot, as of right now, at least, but all playing high school ball. So until you get to the next level, it's different. But even then, I mean, like, it is just, I guess, a different culture. And, like I said, I guess it's just better to be more confident than not. And honestly, I think some athletes maybe just do a better job. I shouldn't say a better job, but maybe just cope better by, like, how should I phrase this? By, like, physically, I guess, showing their emotions or expressing their emotions physically. Does that make sense, Kodey? Like, they can't. Oh, okay, now I don't want to go into, they can't process their emotions, so they have to punt the football after every interception. Nah, I ain't gonna go down that route. That sounds like a little bit too much. But also, I think there's a little bit of truth there. I think there are some dudes who, just can't, check their emotions like that. And if you want to get deeper, you could probably look into COVID and the whole year or two of socialization that they missed, which is a research that
Simon the sociologist.
I'm just saying. Hey, I'm just saying. Because I feel like a lot of Club Sevens is happening after the pandemic, at least at this point, right? And so, there's probably a deeper meaning to all of it, right? Do we love it? Well, no, obviously Kodey doesn't love it. I understand some of it though, because, you get a clip, makes you feel good, you're expressing your emotions. That's cool, man. But when it comes to the fall, that some dude, especially in this era, is going to take that clip of you punting that little football and then edit you getting ran over on a jet sweep or something like that, and then post that in the fall.
We've already seen this happen.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
already seen this happen, dude. Like, literally.
Yes.
It's like, and I think that nails it right on the head. And don't get me wrong, it definitely, like, they fuel each other with it. You know what I mean? Because one player, like, mosses another, like, you get mossed by somebody from Arizona or whatever, and then you intercept them the next time. They were, like, staring you down and walking all the way to, they are literally looking at you for a whole minute. Like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna get this fool, and then your emotions are gonna be extra high because they already brought it high. You know what I mean? So it's definitely an overarching Sevens culture thing, not exclusive to any which one team or anything like that. But yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on it. If you have some more to talk about, I just want to let our listeners know that at the 20-minute mark, we do have good things to say about 7v7 football, but I don't know if they stuck around because I was just ranting for like 8 straight minutes. But yeah, I just had to try and rope them back in here a little bit.
Yeah, well, I don't have too much more to say. I mean, we may not like it, and this is a little bit of transition here. We may not like the culture of 7v7 football. We may not, like how certain behaviors may seem encouraged in 7v7 football and whatnot. But at the end of the day, at least here in Colorado, it's pretty vital to a lot, when it comes to recruiting, when it comes to player development and all that stuff. And, I think a lot of it really lies on the lack of top tier coaching and schemes on the high school level. Right, Kodey?
No, absolutely. I think that Sevens is definitely a response to the rest of Colorado football. And you know what? We need Sevens here. We might need Sevens here in Colorado more than any other state. At least top, or at least, how am I trying to say this? We might need it relative to our regular football culture, maybe the most out of any state. Honestly, I don't think that's far-fetched. I think that it's just with where Colorado is at as we're addressing in this, we need Sevens because this is the most that any kids are going to be looked at for positions that they literally play and where they should be getting more than like 5 targets a season. Kids are getting, we'll talk about this later, but they're actually getting opportunities to develop. Like, if you are a, quote, wide receiver in a wing T offense, I'm sorry, bro, but like, you better be good on the defensive side of the ball. Otherwise, you are never going to play. You're never going to grow. Like, that's not optional. Even like teams that aren't wing T but are still like I-form power teams, like any Arapahoe wide receiver, like you're going to struggle to grow without having the 7v7 opportunity if your team is not going to pass the ball. That's just the truth of it. It is so necessary for us to have Sevens because of where the rest of Colorado football is. And I hope and think that it can help move Colorado in the right direction as more and more, kids are, getting the opportunities that they want. And, they're getting to interact with coaches that are helping them grow at a position that they enjoy. And, being a wide receiver in today's recruiting day and age where there's a million wide receivers probably are... I don't have numbers to back this up, so I just want to say, this, I don't know how accurate this is, but wide receiver feels like the position that most people try and play on the next level, just because, there are opportunities for 3 receivers to be on the field, 4 receivers to be on the field, even 5 receivers to be on the field sometimes, and then you have the receivers that are barely on the field for receiving, but they play punt return and kick return and stuff like that. So being a receiver is super competitive, and Colorado is way behind the ball on producing or the receiver production in general here. And so Sevens coaching helps you develop that. They help you learn routes and practice routes that you would never run in your offense, at least in your standard Colorado football offense. And they're going to help you develop your route trees, your double moves, how to sell vertical, like they are going to help you so much, and just the volume and the reps is so, so important. And, the same could be said for reps and stuff against actual passing teams, because in Sevens, they're going to pass the ball more than they run. And so as a cornerback, as a safety, as a linebacker, Sevens is so important to try and round you out as a player because of the opportunities that you're getting. And the coaches know the pass game. The coaches in Sevens, they know how to play, whether it's calling a passing offense or whether it's defending a passing offense. They know a lot more about that, I would say, especially here in Colorado, than I'd say your average coach does. Is that far-fetched? Is that a blasphemous thing to say?
No, it's not blasphemous. I mean, I think the mediocrity of coaching here in Colorado, just plain and simple, not of everyone, but of a pretty solid majority of programs, has, put the state in a position where if there was no club 7v7s, then I'd be really scared to watch what our skill players would actually be and where they would actually be at, to be honest with you, because I don't think they would be very polished or in a good spot. And, that's, I feel like, something that's super fair, just because, I feel like up until recently, Colorado has always been really focused on running the ball. At least with sevens, it puts the pressure on teams to like, hey, maybe we should do something that, our athletes are working on in the offseason instead of forcing them to run a stupid wing tee or run focused offense that, doesn't translate to the next level at all, really, right? And so I love it. I think it, like you said, it rounds out a lot of athletes. And for Colorado, it brings a lot of, and this is kind of dangerous here, and I'll explain why in a little bit, but it does kind of help raise the skill level of a lot of our skill players here to the level of about average around the entire country. Does that make sense here, Kodey?
No, it's kind of, we're playing catch up via sevens. And I know what you mean, as in like, it's not, once again, it's not pads football, but the volume that they get here is kind of all they got sometimes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to shout out some 7v7 clubs that we've worked closely with and talked with. First off, and I'm going to talk about all three here, Kodey. But first off, I do want to shout out Greg Thomas, Coach Thomas over at Team Full Gorilla. In my opinion, one of the best skill player trainers in the entire state. Did get to drop in on a couple of his training sessions during the regular season, so make sure to hit him up for that extra work and whatnot on the weekends, usually Sundays, if I'm not mistaken there. He does really good work. Obviously, he has experience playing college ball as well, so he knows what it takes to get there. And he's trained some of the best receivers in the state. I want to say he's had at least 2 or 3 receivers from every top 5 senior class. Did I say that correctly? From every senior class that we've done a top 5 on these last 3 years, I want to say he's had 2 or 3 make it. And if you want to count tight ends, you could throw a couple in there as well too. And it's not because, we're biased or anything like that. They're truly great athletes that I feel like he plays a really good role in molding and whatnot. And so he does such a good job developing them. And honestly, that caliber of coaching is not really something you'll find at many different schools. Shout out Coach Dooley as well at Vista Ridge. That's another guy who I feel like does a really good job at developing guys. But those two guys, you could even go a tier below. I don't know if many programs even have that, as a receivers coach. And I'm just listening to these two dudes coach, and I've done it over the last 2 years, whether it's at 7v7 tryouts, practices, games, mostly with Dooley when it comes to the games and whatnot. And it's just the level of detail that they go into when explaining certain things to their receivers is just something that you know that you're not seeing with some of the other squads, and you know that when you watch some other teams play, and that's really obvious. So there's that as well. And then with the Ducks, I gotta shout out Coach Avijo over there. He's Columbine skill guy, and he has a lot of information to provide as well. You see it kind of a lot, I would say, on the defensive side of the ball. They run really solid pass defenses out over there with the Ducks organization, and you see that kind of translate over to Columbine's defense as well. I feel like their pass defenses last year was really good, and they battled with some squads that threw the ball, even though their offense doesn't throw the ball. But getting that DB work / receiver work, that's huge. And obviously, he has experience running his own sevens, well, I guess not sevens, it was flag football, I want to say, a team, and being successful there. And then last but not least, I want to shout out the coaches at 719 Elite here in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs' club team here. I've sat in on a session or two. I want to say it was just tryouts though, and it may have just been tryouts, but they were still coaching up these athletes who you could kind of see were not exactly getting that from their high schools, and you could tell because there were just certain things that they were not as familiar with. But shout out to those guys because they were so patient, and the way they explained certain things while still being firm and being detailed as well. That's big time. And so honestly, just such great coaching at the 7v7 club level here. I had to shout out our 3 programs that we've followed a lot and have helped us a lot, by the way, throughout the last couple of seasons, and have supported us because they've really done a lot pushing forward the skill level of Colorado football players, whether it's on the offensive side or the defensive side, by providing, extra details when coaching kids up and all that stuff, and telling them, hey, this is why you got to do this. Right? It's not just because I'm yelling at you and you have to do it. This is why you got to do this. You can't leave your teammate out to dry. You got to, be a little bit smarter here. And so that's the type of coaching that you don't see at most Colorado high schools. And it's apparent because there are some high schools that can't even call a quick game. Right, Kodey?
They cannot. There are plenty. There's more coaches that can't than coaches that can. So... I think that kind of speaks for itself. And, I just also want to, kind of clump into while we're just recognizing coaches, these assistant coaches that, look, all of these 7v7 coaches, at least from these programs that we follow, they dedicate a lot of time, and they don't, they're not millionaires from it either. They are doing this for the advancement of Colorado football, for the reps in Colorado football. And I think that's really, really important. And, it's funny because, I think with Ducks, I like talking to those guys because, they are such a Columbine and kind of that Western area, Western Littleton and stuff kind of influence. They obviously have players from everywhere. But, I'm always like, hey, so when are we going to see this offense over at Columbine? And they're like, you have no idea how many conversations we've had with the coach who's been there. So you know what I mean? Like, it's going to just literally need a page to be turned. But I have confidence with, getting these players reps and sevens and stuff that when that page is ready to be turned, and we've seen it, the athletes are there to run like a crazy air raid offense. You know what I mean? No matter what school, whether it's, in Conifer where you have Forsyth tearing it up for the Ducks and whatnot, and it's all the way down in the Springs with, all these athletes that we've seen succeed with TFG. I think of last year, BB Hills, who's been a TFG guy through and through and is historically one of the greatest Colorado receivers to ever step on the turf. You know what I mean? And obviously, we've seen it with some of these, Southern Colorado cats with 719 and stuff who, they're still probably not as big as they want to be quite yet, but I think we're taking steps in the right direction here as they are still kind of trying to get off the ground and, have guys that, have produced both on and off the 7v7 gridiron and then within the realms of tackle as well. So obviously, shout out to, the dudes running the programs, running the offenses, and then a huge shout out to the assistants that, sacrifice a lot of time, and the administration guys and the social media guys that do a lot for recruiting, which, we'll talk about that next in more detail. But really, these coaches, they do more for Colorado football than a solid handful of tackle football coaches. That's just what it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And before we move on, I do want to talk about, I guess, the negatives when it comes to, 7v7 being the source of a lot of really good coaching. Because, well, here's the thing. First things first, all the 7v7 clubs listening to this, and I know there's people, from those clubs listening to this, keep doing what you're doing. Always respecting it. But what I'm talking about downside here, here's where I'm coming from. It can't be just 7v7s providing the majority of quality coaching in Colorado. At least when it comes to skill players. It just can't. That's not sustainable. There's only so many of y'all. There's only so many players you can play. You can only put 7 players on the field, And so for that to really be holding, like holding together the skill gap between us and other states is definitely a dangerous game to be playing. because that's kind of how I view it, and I'm not saying, all the best skill coaches and whatnot coach 7v7 in the off season, but I'd say a pretty good majority in my opinion. Now there are some good skill guys that don't, but there aren't too many, and I think the unfortunate part is that there's just not like a lot more of these coaches and more programs throughout, Colorado, and not just at the 4A or 5A level, but 1A, 2A, 3A as well. And so for 7v7 coaching to be one of the few things holding together the skill gap from being insurmountable when it comes to our skill athletes compared to, I guess, athletes from the South like Florida, Georgia, Texas, that's a dangerous game to be playing. You get what I'm saying, Kodey?
No, absolutely. It's just, you're not playing the same game year round. I mean, if I practice my craft to its full extent half of the year in the spring without pads versus guys who will run it in pads year round in similar or the same systems, it's just not going to quite translate the same way.
Yeah, and I mean, imagine if you had a Coach Thomas type at every school in Colorado. The culture would be different for sure. We'd be in a way better spot, easily. But unfortunately, I don't think you could find a whole other Coach Thomas like that. He is definitely a different breed out there. And I mean that in a very respectful and good way. But, that's definitely a concern, But other than that, I mean, sevens, they do a lot for Colorado players as far as coaching goes. And I think there are some coaches out there that are like, oh, well, 7v7, you form bad habits. I'm sure there are. I think there definitely are some bad habits that you do see every now and then to adjust to the game of 7v7 football. But I would also, is this going to be controversial or weird? I don't know. I guess I would rather have a player continue to develop skill-wise and maybe form some bad habits that are like 7v7, that are caused by 7v7, rather than them not doing sevens at all and then them not knowing how to, I don't know what release to use or even know what different releases are or how to battle a press and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I get what you mean, and that it's a tricky thing to try and say, obviously, right? Because you're not saying, oh, bad habits are fine, you know what I mean? But it's like, at least they have habits on a release that normally doesn't matter. You know what's a bad habit? Not selling vertical because you're not motivated by the idea of getting the football. And I mean, it's a team sport. No, actually, scratch that. Like, obviously, when you play sports to succeed, right? Like, no one is actively thinking selfishly, exclusively, I would say. But, I mean, look, especially if you want to play on the next level, like, you got to get yours sometimes, too. And it's one of those things where it's like, if I'm a wide receiver in an offense where I know I'm never going to get the ball, what makes me want to, like, the defense knows that when I sell vertical, it doesn't matter. So, where would my extra effort come from? You know what I mean? And so it's like, at least like if I have 7 stuff to kind of think about, it makes even those reps where even if you are running someone off, it gives you one more thing to practice, and even if you're not practicing right, you're still practicing something, and developing some kind of skill tree rather than a single skill branch, like it's kind of night and day, honestly, as far as, okay, maybe you're forming bad habits, but at least you have a plethora of like other skills that you've gotten in exchange for that. At least you know how to read a defense and know what to see in a cover 2 as a wide receiver and what to look for in film too. Like there's so much more that you can look for repping sevens and stuff instead of not ever passing the ball. It's like, okay, it doesn't matter what the defense shows us. We're going to run, wing T right and wing T left and then trap plays all game. It doesn't matter. Like, obviously that's cool for the line and all, but as a skill position player, how am I really supposed to care about all that?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean,
which is a bad habit itself.
Yes, no, for sure. And I mean, even, I guess, adding on to it from a quarterback perspective, it also helps just being able to see different defenses. And that's another coaching thing when it comes to Colorado. I think there are plenty of times where, they just some quarterbacks are just not going to see that complicated of a defense. Sometimes it's because of, the level, like the classification for sure. Like 1A and 2A aren't going to run that crazy of a defense. They're going to try to keep it simple, and part of that is because they have a lot of players playing both ways, so it'd be stupid to, do too much there. But when you get to higher classifications, even then, and that's, more of a, I guess, sign of mediocrity when it comes to overall coaching in Colorado. You're still not going to see anything too crazy, even though they have the numbers to have players just play defense. So it still helps just to see different schemes, like you were saying. And then same on defense as well. From a safety standpoint or even linebacker standpoint, it still helps to know, okay, these are the concepts that we'll be going up against. And, that's something I definitely realized when, paying attention to Coach Thomas during some of his training sessions, because I'm sure he does this as well, during his 7v7 stuff. He's mentioned it a couple of times here, where he'll be like, hey, if it's like this or this, these are some routes or some things you might be able to recognize here. This is where the quarterback's going to try to go with the ball placement here and all of that great stuff. And so I'd rather players be able to see that stuff and be able to recognize it than be the one idiot at a college camp that doesn't know what's happening, and then next thing they know, they get head topped, and there goes any interest there, right? So I guess that's just where I'm coming from. I wanted to make sure I threw that in when talking about coaching for sure.
Yeah, and do you think that is, you're talking about college camps, which I think that a lot of the drills and stuff, and is a focus at least of some of the combines that we've seen for sevens, kind of tries to focus on is kind of those camp drills or combines and kind of functions that we go through. Do you think that this is a good time to kind of talk about sevens' impact on recruiting?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's try to tie it down in relation to Colorado. I feel like which we did last segment, but I feel like the one before that we talked about it in general. But let's talk about it in relation to Colorado, because I think when it comes to 7v7 football, I think just as much as it's important for athletes to get that coaching, to keep that, I guess, gap close compared to other players in America, the recruiting is kind of the same thing, right? Colorado recruiting could definitely be better. We talked about it a lot when it came to coaching. Some coaches don't do anything when it comes to recruiting and helping out their own athletes, which is wild. And so when it comes to 7v7 football, I mean, a lot of these programs do so much for their athletes. A lot of it is really just reposting their stuff so it gets more looks and whatnot, or visiting different, campuses to at least get, faces to names and all that great stuff. And it's a lot of things that most programs in Colorado don't do independently, or at least a lot of programs in Colorado don't do independently. And so we've come to the point where 7v7 clubs, I would say, have become really important to recruiting for our athletes. And, like I said, with the coaching part, that's a very dangerous game to play, because if the only thing that is, keeping that gap close between us and other situations around the country is our 7v7 clubs, the 5 or whatever there is out here, that's not good, because there's only so much you can do. But, our sevens, they really do a good job, and they care a lot, and that's something that honestly really matters, and plays a role in the recruitment of these great athletes here. Wouldn't you say that as well, Kodey? At least to get noticed, right? I don't know if you'll ever get an offer because of 7v7, and a lot of programs will say that as well, but at least to get noticed, it does a good job there.
Well, we've seen it time and time again where, like you said, sevens, maybe not the direct offer, but maybe a camp invite. I don't know. It's like, okay, well, this kid did really well in this, but let's go to one of their games. Let's check it out, especially for like the younger guys on like the 15U level, I think are huge beneficiaries of sevens here in Colorado, where, they play for a team and maybe they're buried behind the depth chart because they only play seniors or something like that, and they're at a squad that doesn't even pass the ball, then this is really, really huge for them as far as an opportunity to showcase their skills, showcase their game, and really make a push to be on a team and to contribute to winning football. I think that here in Colorado, there's examples of guys that would have never got looks from like the numbers that they put up in their tackle football season. I'd say that DeAndre Horn is one of those guys because of the system that he played in. I honestly think that sevens wise, that it's been very kind to Charlie Eckhart and whatnot. And, I think that to tie in what our coaches do so well is anytime somebody gets offered or to a camp or to a college, the 7 team is posting that offer before like the high school account or before, even like families have time. Like it might be like they are making these graphics. They are circulating. Other schools are probably seeing this, that follow these organizations. And like you said, maybe you're not getting offered straight off the field from a 7v7 game, rightfully so, but you are getting that you're turning ahead. And that's where it has to start for basically anybody. You need to have an opportunity to have a head turned. And, that's something that even like, the Elite 11 is a comparable opportunity, I guess. Well, I mean, most of those guys or gals are still doing something at their school too. But, it's something where you're turning heads and then they come and see you in pads and they're like, all right, look, this guy, he's had 2 targets all game. What did he do on those 2 targets? That was 2 receptions. One where he ran a very good double move and got open for a touchdown. Another one where he caught and ran for 20 yards on like a screenplay or something, and he made someone miss. So sevens here in Colorado does a great job of turning heads. They do a fantastic job of promoting their players. I guess I wouldn't know because I don't really pay attention to the 7 scene in other states quite like that. But the way that they make these graphics, the way that they're always posting about visiting camps or, the opportunities that they also get as far as, getting their players to camps, using their connections, being honest with coaches, on the college level and being like, hey, they ask a question, do you have a defensive back? Well, I have this guy. You're going to have to come take a look for yourself. He plays, wide receiver on offense, but I think he could be a good defensive back because we've had him play defensive back. And this kind of ties into coaching with Colorado as well. They'll have you play different positions if they think that you have a better chance of making it to college like that versus I feel like varsity coaches are probably less likely to do that and opt to their position coaches who won't like send someone to another position really. It's way more rare, I would say, versus I want to say like I've at least witnessed TFG be brutally honest and be like, hey, you're not a wide receiver. Hop in at defensive back. Get some reps in. Let's get you some work. You know what I mean? And, they've produced very well, I would say, as far as what they've done with the defensive backs that they have. And the defensive backs have then gone on to have pretty solid seasons and then recruitment journeys as well, especially at like safety and corner and whatnot. So, I think that Colorado does a great job of not only preparing players for what, a potential college camp would look like, what to expect, how to do these drills properly, not look like a ding-dong out there like you were saying, where it's like, oh my gosh, like deer in headlights kind of thing, which isn't going to make you look good, especially if you're confused or not confident already. Our 7 squads do a great job of preparing players for that, and they do a fantastic job, once again, of promoting our players and marketing our players and showing the players how to market themselves as well, honestly.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point there when you said they do a good job helping players market themselves and helping with all that. Because honestly, you talked about the graphics and all that great stuff. I mean, that's all stuff that I've seen programs out of state really just out of state, like post, right, for athletes. And that's just not really something you see, I guess, a whole ton here, and that's just, I don't know.
It's rare. It's rare.
Yeah, okay. I guess you'll see it every now and then. But yeah, no, it is definitely rare, but it's just not. I don't know. You have to be social media savvy, right? And I kind of just feel like there are a lot of schools out here that are just not that. And, and I'd even talked to some of the social media guys with some of these 7v7 squads, and they're like, oh, it's not that hard, it's I'm pretty casual with it compared to some other guys. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy, because your casual is the greatness of a lot of programs here, at least if we want to talk about, quality of work. So there's that, which is another red flag on why, it's bad that sevens are kind of the lead here when it comes to really all these things here. And it's just not good, it's just not good that is going on. And that's, I guess, the one of the few things acting as an equalizer, if that even, right? So yeah, I guess I don't have too much more to say here. Well, all I really had to say is that sevens, they do a good job, they do their best. They always say, and I see these posts all the time, hey, athletes, make sure you tag us and stuff. Make sure you do this and that. And, I know these coaches are also telling players how to, kind of handle recruiting and all of that great stuff and give them advice, since they've helped so many other players do that, and I think that's really something that's real underrated, because like I said, some coaching staffs here in Colorado, they don't know how to handle recruiting. Not really. Especially when it comes to high-level prospects. How many programs really know how to do that on a consistent basis? And Kodey, answer honestly, do you think it's more than 30 here in Colorado?
That know how to handle recruiting?
Yeah.
You said over 30?
Yeah.
No. No, I was
great.
I just wanted to chip in real quick on that point too. Like you said, you have these 7v7 coaches are doubling as like recruiting coordinators for some of these kids that don't even go to their school, mind you. Like they'll still help them out, because a lot of these coaches, they coach at high school programs in the fall, but they'll still help out their guys from 7, because at that player's school, they have no idea what they're doing. They don't have any connections to the college level. They teach their history class, they coach football, they collect a paycheck, and they go home. And then they drop their 4 plays in their playbook and call it a day. And then they run people for like 2 hours. Like, no, I definitely think that, and I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong here, Simon, but I feel like a lot of staffs in places that are a bit more serious, or even the more serious staffs here, they will have an actual like designated staff member, whether it's on the coaching staff or whatever, that helps athletes get recruited and lets you know what to look for, and kind of how to play your cards and get your film out there and edit your film as well, or show you how to edit your film, or edit your film for you and then help send it out, or you know what I mean? Like, I feel like there's not a lot of that, if any of it, really, in Colorado. Definitely not over 30. Definitely not over 30.
And that's, out of 200 plus, that's tough, and yeah, I don't know. It's a whole mess, but, shout out to all the sevens putting in work. I don't really have more to say here about recruiting. Do you, Kodey?
Keep up the graphics. Sometimes the sevens is where I'll get some of my news from. Like, whether it's Ducks posting about somebody who's going to a camp or just got offered, or whether it's TFG posting one of those graphics about somebody getting offered. Like, we use that for our research when talking about like top 5 players and where they have offers to. I'm not even going to lie on that. Like, that is very helpful information for other outlets and for media in Colorado. Wouldn't you agree on that? Just to kind of like wrap us up on this subject.
Yeah, and I'm also going to put this out there. The 7-on-7 scene in Colorado is also where we get a lot of our sources. Not all of it, for sure, because we always have a couple more sources in each community to go ahead and cross-check. But that's where we do get a lot of our sources, and that's something that I told Spencer from Box State Sports. Make sure you check him out. And then our new guy here, Gino, who you'll be hearing from, you the listeners will be hearing from this fall. When we went to that 7v7 event, I talked to both of them, and I'm like, hey, this is where you get the tea. Talking to coaches and players and whatnot. I mean, it's a great place to just socialize as well. And I think it's also important for players to do that too, so that they could be a little bit more connected, and so that they could also have, if they really wanted to, private training sessions with each other, which is equally as important. But the socialization part is huge. And for us, I mean, like you said, Kodey, we do get a lot of our sources from 7v7 events, whether it's coaches or parents, that's a big one, or players. And so when we come, to the fall season, and, we're doing our season previews and all of that great stuff, and you're wondering where some of our narratives are coming from, just know there is a little source behind pretty much every single narrative that we are putting out there, and that's where the root of it is. And so I don't know if that, I don't know if that's super important or not. But for us, I mean, that's definitely something that kind of helps us continue to promote Colorado and help with recruiting, because, it helps to have narratives out there when playing your game and not just being another number, right? Not just being another statistic. It helps having a story behind why you're doing so well and having background information there. And if you listen to our season previews and recaps and all that stuff, I mean, you could see a lot of that narrative laced into performances and how well they've done, and that's definitely something that, we've kind of taken from our sources who, we usually meet at some of these 7-on-7 events or trainings or practices or games or whatever, or tryouts. And so that's definitely something that also helps with recruitment. Just us being able to cover that stuff with the right, I guess, sources. So there you go there. But Kodey, let's go ahead and move on here. Let's talk favoritism when it comes to 7v7. And I think this is something that maybe, I guess, I understand a little bit more than when it comes to favoritism in like public schools, because, it is a private club most of these 7v7 clubs are private clubs, right? And you got coaches and who their guys are and all that stuff and who they want to roll with. And, I don't really blame coaches for, wanting to go with the guy that they're more comfortable with or who have been in their, program or system for multiple years. Is that fair to say there, Kodey?
I think it's fair. I just want to put out that favoritism in tackle football at schools can be worse than what I've seen in sevens, honestly. Because in sevens, I've seen, we saw it this past year where they had one quarterback who did very well for a particular program one year and then is not on the team this year in sevens. You know what I mean? And so I feel like that's more likely to happen when comparing play for sevens, then maybe it is more likely to happen for a program where, I'll say this, sevens coaches can't be bought, if that makes sense, by like parents or boosters throwing money. They're not going to roll like that because they're here to compete. That can happen at tackle football schools. We've talked about it. We've witnessed it. It happens kind of an alarming amount, I would say, at least with Colorado. And so while there could be favoritism from, obviously there's pretty decent, Vista Ridge representation on TFG from time to time and whatnot. But I feel like that's still more earned than some players that get on the field at certain schools from more like paternal factors I have not seen that in sevens yet. I have not seen that in any of the sevens programs that we cover is buying minutes or playing time or a spot on the team.
Well, I'm sure if the price is right, you could definitely buy your playing time. Let's just be honest there. I think that's fair, in all situations though, But yeah, no, I think you're right as well, because the thing is with sevens is that if you want players to play for your club, you gotta kind of be good. You can't just be everyone's doormat. And you definitely gotta prove yourself, and you gotta win chips, and to do that you gotta play the best players out there. And with and I think this is something to throw out there as well. I want to say that a lot of the guys running these 7v7 club teams, they're very aware with where Colorado stands nationally when it comes to football talent. They know where they're at. And so, do you think they could really afford to get punked by a team down south playing, guys who should be their third stringers? No. Why pay all the money to go there to just do that? You know what I'm saying? You want to put out your best players, put yourself in the best position to go and win, right? And so I think that's definitely a motivator. And, players, because it's club, they could always move to another club if they don't like what you're doing there. It's not like schools where they're literally trapped at a school that, doesn't know how to throw the ball, and then now they can't leave or they're going to lose a year of eligibility. Like, no. In sevens, you can leave whatever and go play for a rival club or, do your thing there. That's something that we have seen a lot. And honestly, you got to chase the best opportunity for you. That's not exactly something that we look down upon either. You definitely got to go chase the best opportunity to develop and get reps. Because what's the point really of sitting behind guys and not getting reps at all in sevens? And so I think that's definitely something that kind of helps balance out favoritism, if there is any, in club 7v7 football. Wouldn't you agree, Kodey?
Yeah, and I think part of that just comes down to, and this is a great time to once again call out tackle football coaching in Colorado. It's partially a pride thing. Like, I feel like they have a lot more pride in how they're representing Colorado across the country. From the exposure and the amount of times that they're going to face teams from across the country. But, they're not complacent with, a 5-5 season like we've noticed some coaches and staffs and administrators have allowed here in Colorado. They're not complacent or okay with, just losing to like the Valor of Arizona or the Creek of Florida or something like that. They want theirs. These 7 programs are very competitive, especially when they get on the national scene. They realize, or at least they play with the motivation that they're playing for something bigger than their club. They're playing for Colorado football. They're playing for their personal pride and representation, and they take that very seriously. And I think that does impact, the lack of favorite, or maybe it decreases likelihoods in some senses and cases of favoritism, I would say.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And honestly, playing with that pride, we talked about it a little bit when it came to toxic competition at the beginning of this episode, but honestly though, playing with pride is really important, and playing with confidence is really important. And I think at least the thing that 7v7 does is that it does empower these kids, at least for this spring season, right? Which is important, especially when it comes to competing against teams from out of state, because this is really one of the few chances they'll get to consistently play and beat up on out-of-state competition and prove ourselves. Another reason why 7v7 is important, because it's one of the few opportunities for Colorado players outside of the regular season to go out of state and go play a team and players who may be ranked a little bit higher or are coming from out of state, and so, being able to do that goes a long way, because that obviously helps with recruiting, showing out and doing your best out there. That's huge, right? And so to play with pride, you got to play with the best, and you got to be confident as a coaching staff that it is the best, that your starting lineup you're putting out there is the best, players to be out there and giving you the best opportunities to win and whatnot, and maintain that pride and not keep getting, sunned and whatnot. So I think all of that is obviously super important, and I guess that's another plus when it comes to 7-on-7 here. But honestly, don't have too much more to say about favoritism. Like I said, I think it's natural, and I would tell athletes this: it's natural for some of these club teams to go with the guys that they've been rocking with for a couple of years. When it comes to 7v7, I don't necessarily think it's something that you could do for one off season and then quit and then try to come back to. You got to get at least 2 or 3 seasons under your belt. And then if you don't want to do it going into your senior year, or obviously your senior year, that's fine too, right? But I think it's definitely something you have to commit to for more than 1 year here to really, justify getting your playing time and feeling entitled to that playing time, right, Kodey?
No, absolutely. I think that I mean, just like anything, if you want to see progress, you're going to have to commit. And, I feel like something about sevens too is the investment that they see and the coachability that they see. The coaching here will reciprocate that, if that makes sense. So, you make it to all the practices, you make it to, all the scrimmages that you have before leaving state, you make the travel for the state, like, they'll see that, they'll witness that. And this is something that, I kind of got a chance to talk to some Ducks guys about who've done a great job at, having such a large program. The struggles with that is sometimes they don't see the same people all the time. And so obviously with them, if you want to call it favoritism, you can call it that, but earning it, they are more likely to play the guys that they see at every practice or most practices and have made it to scrimmages and yada, yada, yada. They're more likely to reward that as well on the sevens levels versus I've seen, like the player that could do no wrong at schools and, not show up to practice or show up later or whatever, and they get a pass, whereas other people wouldn't in tackle. I've seen this. So, I think that it is different. Once again, I just think that the favoritism scale kind of leans itself to be less susceptible in sevens for a multitude of reasons, and that being another one too.
For sure. But, let's keep this thing moving. Let's talk about our last topic here, which is really broad, but the money part when it comes to 7v7 football, because there's definitely money to be made. We know of programs here in Colorado that make bank, off of 7v7 football. Pretty nice chunk of change. But I guess, and I don't think it's really about accessibility. I think if, you really wanted to, you could find a way to, join a 7v7 club and participate in all those activities. But for some athletes, it's definitely a little bit of a restrictor. And, some programs don't have as many sponsors as others. Is that fair to say, Kodey?
I would say that if sevens was around when I was in school, I don't know if I would be able to access it. I think that that's a pretty decent answer to that question. And look, here's the thing. A lot of things are relative, right? There is sevens programs in Colorado that are definitely, like, I would say, or at least in my opinion, are abusive with the price that they're smacking on stuff. And then you have programs that were started in response to that price, and they're more about breaking even, if that makes sense. And while, it may be cheaper than, and it's still an opportunity, it's still one of those things where obviously the more financially set that you are and the more stable that you are financially, the better off you're going to be. That's just like life, honestly. And I've unfortunately have witnessed and lived firsthand kind of like those things that you don't necessarily get. But I will say that, by contrast of some other sevens teams in Colorado that are a lot less accessible, there are more accessible programs in the state.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I do want to kind of touch on what you said about you not being able to afford it. I for sure would not have been able to afford it, even some of the cheaper programs and stuff like that, because first things first, travel also costs a lot. Gas money also is not cheap. So there's that. That's definitely something to throw out there. Being from the Springs, there's only one program that is based out of the Springs, right? So that puts me in kind of a weird spot. Now, if I was in Denver, it would maybe be a little bit of a different, idea, but I think regardless, back then, I definitely would not be able to afford it. And even if I asked my parents, tell me out with some of it, they would have laughed in my face straight up. And so that's definitely something that's a hurdle for a lot of athletes. I think there are some programs, that really do their best to, help athletes out. But, like you said, Kodey, these programs are still trying to break even, right? You still got to make your money some way. And I understand that part. Traveling and renting places and fields and all that stuff. It's not cheap at all. It's definitely not cheap. And so it's got to be paid for somehow. And so I think naturally money is going to be an issue that's always going to come up, especially for, I guess, athletes that might be coming from our background, Kodey, which I would say is more closer to middle class at best, lower class though.
Lower middle
class, which is a very specific demographic, but is a demographic that still matters regardless. Here in Colorado, especially with some of the prices of properties and stuff here. But that's besides the point. I really just got stuck thinking about finances in general there, but. Regardless,
oh no, don't go there.
No, I won't. But regardless, money is definitely an issue for a lot of athletes looking to do this. And so honestly, sevens is just really not a realistic opportunity for some of those athletes. Now, maybe if you're really talented, it is. But how often is that, right? How often is it that you're just extremely talented and you could just get by on that? Because there's always going to be dudes more talented than you, even if they're not at the high school level yet, which is kind of the scary part when you really think about it too. And so I guess there's really not much you could say here. I mean, we both understand the business of it. It's got to get paid somehow, right? All the trips, all the food that they provide, all the hotels, it's got to get paid for. We get it.
Those boys be eating, bruh.
Oh, yeah, no, we be seeing those TFG and Duck stories for sure. All the Chick-fil-A sandwiches they get. But, I mean, we get that it's a business. Now, there's some, and, we keep saying this, who we're talking about. But there's some programs that definitely upsell it and, almost rob you when it comes to playing 7v7, which, if you talk to us personally, we'll tell you, hey, why would you even really consider playing for them like that? Go play for a program that you could honestly get the same amount of coaching and quality of coaching for, but, you'll actually get reps and it's cheaper, right? We say that to a lot of athletes, throughout the season and off season. So there's that. But, we'll just have to see, I guess, moving forward. I don't really think money is something that's going to change too much here. It's got to get paid regardless. And, I don't know. I guess we just wanted to talk about it real quick here. In case there are some athletes listening and thinking, oh, well, maybe I should do 7v7. Honestly, I would also say if you are really strapped for cash, I would rather save it for maybe camps, in state. I'm looking at UNC's camps, CU, CSU Pueblo. I would say, it wouldn't be a bad thing to do those as well if you're really strapped for cash and there's really no financial flexibility there for you. And that's nothing against sevens, obviously, but, you got to work with the opportunities presented with you as an athlete, and some opportunities are predetermined, right, Kodey?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to talk about, and I think that this is a good plug right here to continue to stay tuned for more Culture Series episodes, because we will dedicate an episode or have whatever to talking financials in football here in Colorado and, the full depth of that. But, just like with most things, we are going to mention it here that it does play a role in sevens in the to do or not to do. So
For sure. Now, before we close up here, I do want to talk just a little bit about this event from last weekend, Kodey, just so that we could get all of our thoughts out there. But, I do want to shout out Team Full Gorilla for getting that set up, a little national championship tournament over at Mullen. I think that was huge for our athletes here in Colorado, just, to get an opportunity to play a tournament in state, because that obviously helps with money and travel and all that great stuff. And so I want to shout them out, because regardless of what happened in that tournament, it was a great opportunity, right? And I'm hoping that there's more opportunities like that, because also I'm going to say this, basically all the media here in Colorado got to attend this thing, and so it was pretty big time. It was huge, and so it was great for all of us to be able to cover players and actually be able to gather in one place and talk about all these players, talking about players that might make our watch list or that are in need of big seasons and stuff like that. And so once again, huge shout out to Team Full Gorilla. Can't emphasize how important it was to get a big 7v7 tournament like that at the end of the 7v7 season, but still during it here in Colorado. Isn't that right, Kodey?
No, it was an awesome opportunity. It was good to see everyone again. I feel like, we'd kind of been on different grinds this offseason compared to last offseason. And so, it was refreshing to see a lot of athletes that we're familiar with, say what's up to all those, kiddos, say what's up to parents, get to meet a lot of people like we normally do, get caught up on the storylines, like you said, for our sources, especially as we head into our season previews, at least where you and I are going to be working on them, I mean. And so, I think that it was just very productive, and it's always good to see and talk to those guys. Obviously the tournament itself was very well set up and ran, I would say, getting a lot of games in. 9U, I want to say, was as young as it got, all the way up until 18U, where some teams had some programs had multiple teams, and, just a lot of reps, a lot of snaps, and a lot of competition at this tournament. So, obviously the setup and seeing all those TFG guys was fun. It was fun to reconnect with our Ducks guys, and as far as 7v7 culture goes and whatnot, they felt pretty good about their performance in the tournament and whatnot. And so, I think that there are some really fun games to watch, and just kind of, it was fun to see the Springs out there. I didn't really expect to see them out there. And so it was nice to see them out there and, get some more Colorado representation, 18U and 15U, and, just get to see all these athletes that we talk about all the time, and kind of, not really do scouting, but like a light scout kind of thing, like, how are their habits looking, compared to the last time we maybe saw them, and what are their thoughts heading into the season, and talking to them, hearing about new coaching staffs and what they're doing, yada, yada, yada. It was just really good to get our ear to the ground and to see a lot of these guys. I mean, we have great relationships with, I want to say, like, the majority of athletes in the state. It's not the athletes that drive me nuts most of the time. And so, it's fun to connect with all these young athletes and just talk ball with them and talk their season and talk sevens and how that's gone and what are they working on in the offseason, who are they working with. I think it's always fun to hear people's feedback on trainers and stuff. So, it was a really good experience. I had a ton of fun, and, just getting to talk to a lot of the coaches too and hear who is where as well. People were talking about that quite a bit, and guys that they liked heading into the season, or guys that they thought, had made substantial improvements. Got to talk to a handful of Ducks guys as far as, X, Y, and Z has made good strides. Look out for them. They're switching positions or what have you, stuff like that. And, just kind of getting, hey, where's this kid from? And, huge shout out to TFG for sending us their rosters for the weekend. And then shout out to the Ducks for, posting their rosters and what teams they were. Those were like the Bible for us this weekend. Just reference, like, okay, who's number da-da-da? I know that I've seen that kid before, but what are they wearing? Okay, that's so-and-so from XYZ and stuff like that. So, I really appreciated just getting the direct plug and the setup for the app as well, which I could probably delete, honestly. But Zord Sports, it was a really easy app to use. Sort Sports buy an ad spot. But anyways, I just want to say that, TFG, they did a great job of putting us in the right direction, getting us media passes, getting us all set up in there. So I'm very, very grateful for them. And then it was just good to see and talk to all those guys. And, whether it's administratively, like my guys Travis and John, obviously at TFG, lots of respect and appreciate those guys for, a lot of the time getting us in, letting us know, inviting us and whatnot on the TFG side. And then obviously talking to those coaches and whatnot. And then, for the Ducks side, Coach V Hill, who runs like the social medias and stuff like that and is, messaging us from time to time and kind of keeping our ear to the ground as well, and also invites us to come watch things as well. We have great relationships with those two programs, I would say, in particular, on probably more of a personal level, and I really am grateful for them and everything that they've been able to help us out with. Help us out with? Yeah, I think that is that proper right. English? My brain might be rotting a little bit, but No,
that's right. And yeah, that's pretty much it there. Once again, thank you for TFG, the Ducks, Springs Elite, obviously, all these programs that support us. Now that I'm really looking at this, I guess we didn't have too much critical stuff to say here. Sevens really does a lot for Colorado. It's important. Obviously there are drawbacks, whether it's some bad habits, because, it's sevens, or, it's maybe money being an issue. Sorry, I just totally blanked out there. Whether it's bad habits or money being an issue, obviously everything is going to have its downsides, but for the most part, 7v7 football, especially these club teams, are extremely important to Colorado, and kind of just pushing that envelope and making sure that these athletes continue to develop and keep up with the athletes around the country. Maybe they're not the same level, and they might not always get the respect, but they'll at least get the opportunity to measure themselves, and iron sharpens iron, and they could go from there, and so that's what matters. And so I'm sure, I don't know, 3 or 4 years now, maybe we'll have more to say about 7v7, but for now, I believe that is it. Kodey, do you have anything else to add in? Do you want to go ahead and close up here?
Yeah, obviously, I gotta plug our sevens guys here, but I'm gonna be slightly selfish and plug us first. Go ahead and please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. That's Playmakers Corner, or on Twitter at Playmaker Corner. And then we are also on TikTok and YouTube, making content for y'all guys, especially on TikTok. Simon, once again, killing the game here. He's the video editing god. There, that way you don't have to send pause over the freaking chat this time, bruh. But anyways, he's been doing a great job with those edits, and still more content to come, and be on the lookout for some of the flag football highlights that I was able to see on, unless they're already posted by the time this comes out. I don't know. Just check us out on TikTok. There's lots of fun content on there. And then if you're listening to us, make sure to follow, like, or what have you, so that you get notifications when we post episodes, whether that is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or basically anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Be sure to, toggle those notifications on so you get notified whenever a new episode goes live. Or if you're following us on our socials, you'll see the episode cover then and there on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook once again, and then you can hop on over and give it a listen. And then, obviously go ahead and find Team Full Gorilla or TFG on Instagram or Twitter. Same with Ducks 7v7. You kind of can't miss them, honestly, for those. And then I want to say 719 has an Instagram. I'm not sure if they have a Twitter, but I know Ducks 7v7, it's just at Ducks 7v7 on Twitter. That's probably where they post a ton. And then Team Full Gorilla is just at Team Full Gorilla on Twitter. So be sure to check those out. They do a great job of promoting their players, and that way maybe you can learn something and follow up with them as well. And then maybe you won't be so surprised when we drop a truth bomb on you. But that's kind of what I got for our outro here. Hopefully you didn't have anything else to add there, Coach V. But, as far as everything that I have to say, I've been one of your co-hosts for this episode, Kodey Stoffer.
Check out the rest of our culture series, by the way. But I'm the other co-host.
Yeah!
I'm the other co-host, Simon Villanos, a.k.a. Coach V. And hopefully we'll see you on one of those culture series episodes.
Peace.